folks, and welcome to the Snowy's Camping Show with Ben and Lauren. How are you, Ben?
Good. And you?
Yeah, not too bad at all. So today we're going to bring another customer question episode to you. We do have a longer interview in the pipeline, which we're really excited about, but we've had a bit of leave in the podcast team coming up to sort of manage earlier this year. So just the timelines with things and wanting to make sure we're getting you a good episode and times to sort of edit it and all. We will have a couple of shorter ones in the interim here.
We can do the short ones, a few in a row.
Yeah.
Without too much thought. But the interviews, we want to work hard at getting some good interviews this year. So anyway, we'll get back into it. Everyone's back on board, hopefully in the next week or two.
Yeah, which will be really exciting.
So we've got more customer questions in a little magic bucket of questions here.
Mm-hmm. Go, you pull, because I pulled last time, I think.
Okay, all right. Straight off the top.
Another long one.
Long piece of paper.
How many have we got in there? Some little ones.
I don't think there's many. We've got to refill.
Just keep getting the little ones.
These come from, as we mentioned before, your team. Write down what people commonly ask.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one. Might be a little bit longer than our short 5 to 10 minute episode, but the question's when camping goes wrong.
I think this is more a generic that can be applied to a whole range of different scenarios. You know, because there are lots of different reasons why camping can go wrong, right?
So are we going to, this is a pretty big topic. We need to approach an angle to go. So when camping goes wrong, what do we do when camping goes wrong? How does camping go wrong? I think we cover off on what do you do when camping goes wrong? Well,
I don't know. Why don't we start with what constitutes as when camping goes wrong?
Okay.
Because I feel like that might be, you know, what going wrong for one person might mean something different to someone else. Like I think for me, when camping goes wrong is something like when your food method, whether that be maybe your fridge dies in the arse or something goes wrong with your 12-volt system and you have no way of keeping your food fresh, or weather has completely saturated everything, bedding, chairs, or whether your tent's been obliterated by a storm. You know, that's the sort of thing. I mean, obviously you've got issues of like your car breaking down on the way and all of those sort of external things, but it's like, RAA, and like they're the sort of things people, when you go camping, people tend to, or I mean, I hope people tend to have the travel side of things mostly covered.
Yeah. So this is, I guess we're assuming you've covered off on, you've always got enough water, you've got first aid. So if things go wrong, you're able to look after the basic health and safety of the people in your group.
Yeah.
But yeah, if camping goes wrong in the realms of what you've talked about there, then I think you need to approach camping with the idea that things could go wrong and probably will go wrong. There are some things that you kind of go, all right, that didn't work out. We can do this instead and still enjoy your time. But those instances probably need to rethink what you're doing. If you don't have any food for a long weekend
depending
of camping.
on how, and also depending on how far away you are. Like if you're at a caravan park and you've just, you know, prepped all this lovely food and maybe you're in a country town somewhere or you're just out of town or whatever, you might just have to swallow it and just go and buy more food.
Yep.
And
food.
Work out a way, work out a way to make that work for you.
Yeah.
If it was me personally, and I'm not a person that gives up easily, like I'm generally happy with any scenario, but if I was to wake up and there'd been some sort of, my tent had been compromised and there had been water ingress and my mat was wet and my bedding was wet, if there was no ability for me to try and dry that out during the day, if the day wasn't going to be clear and sunny and I could air it out and hang it up in a tree or do something to repatriate the situation, I'd go home. Like I just think there's just no point in trying to sleep in a wet, soggy bed, tent, whatever scenario.
Yep.
But I think if your tent's broken by the wind, unless it's been like chewed up and spat back out again. But there's always ways with, you know, gaffer tapes and a stick even that you find on the ground to try and repair a frame or whatever.
Yeah, if you can repair it and continue on,
then
just accept that that's part of camping.
Yeah.
If it has been obliterated and you've got nothing to sleep under and you're out on cold, wintry weekend, even anytime you need shelter, right?
Yeah.
Then you might just need to bite the bullet and say,
Yeah.
look, just didn't work out this time. Go home.
Yep.
It's going to be annoying, but that can happen
Yeah.
with camping. But if you're near a town, then there's usually ways about it, like repair somewhere in town. You can get new poles or get a repair done, or
even just hardware store. You might have bits and pieces you could use.
Yeah, if your bedding's wet, there might be a laundromat you can go and dry it at. Like, just think outside the square. It might mean you didn't get that hiking that you were going to do, so you just got to weigh those things up.
Yeah.
If I do this, am I going to miss out on everything I came here to do and spend my day in a laundromat drying my sleeping bag?
Yeah.
Am I okay with that? If it's not going to make you miserable because you've got the rest of your trip, then just do it and accept that happened, and it's all part of the adventure.
Yeah.
And it's a story to tell later.
And I think it's really interesting because obviously sort of working more in a customer facing role now, there's lots of different personalities and expectations within the camping community. And I come from a background of, well, you're camping, you're out, you're not at home. Like you say, things can go wrong, but it's also sort of an exercise in resilience and resourcefulness. And I know that, I have spoken to people before who have had a chair break, for example, whilst they're on camping. And so they've come home because they haven't had anywhere to sit. And it's like, then I think, well, I've camped in the past and had like a moon chair, like my Black Wolf sofa chair. I love that chair. It's huge, comfy, chunky, whatever. But I remember one night, one of the rivets just burst out of it and I like sunk halfway down and just ended up fixing it by trying like a few different sticks and twigs that we found over and over until we found one that was really dense and hard and it was the right fit, and it just sort of held it into place. And I ended up being there for another 3 days using the chair that had been just repaired with a stick. But, sitting around the campfire, got a little tumbler of wine and you're like working out how to fix it. And that's part of like, yes, of course, it would totally suck to be camping and have 3 days ahead of you and not have a chair to sit on.
Yep.
But there's also that opportunity of how it's viewed. I could have been like meh and left or cracked it or, been miserable, or just try and have some fun and, like you say, try and be a bit more resourceful or be in that problem solving sort of frame of mind.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, I haven't used that chair for a while, I'm pretty sure the stick's still in it.
All right. Well, there you go. Long-term bush mechanic fix. Yeah. I reckon on a high level, if something happens, stop and take a look at it and think, if I stay, am I going to be miserable for the rest of my trip because of this scenario?
Yeah.
Or can I do X and still enjoy myself? And that's going to be largely dependent on time that you're camping, I suppose. Example I use, I know a few times I've been to a campsite and just not been able to get a site, or the sites that were left were called a campsite, but there's no way you could pitch a tent on there.
Yeah.
In those instances, and this was on a longer trip that I've had, we couldn't just go home because we're a long way from home.
Yeah.
So we said to the kids, we can't camp here. We're not going to camp here. It's not a nice place to camp. We're just going to completely change tacks. And because we're away for months, we spent a long time driving into the night and camped somewhere else to just completely change our track, completely change our plans.
Yeah.
But it went wrong because we couldn't camp where we wanted to, but we couldn't go home. So we just said, well, we'll go up here instead. It just means that for that night, that one night out of my 3 months on the road, we said to the kids, we're going to go to the pub and get dinner, and then we're going to hit the road and drive through the night.
See what we find.
Find a camp somewhere. And then the next day we're going to pull up in this town and our adventure will start again.
Yeah.
So I think you got to be like, resilience is good and just think outside the square.
Yeah.
But if that was a 3-day trip, wouldn't have been worth it, because it's total. I'm spending a third of my trip where I would have already driven there, a third of the time, and I'm supposed to be just
still
relaxing,
trying to find somewhere else to
driving,
go.
So,
yeah. And I think also the factors that you would consider is the main factors is weather, and also sort of your health and safety. I mean, I think it's all very good and well to be resilient and resourceful, which is great. But we're not talking Bear Grylls here.
No.
Like I was on a recent trip that I did just last week actually. No, 2 weeks ago. My kids were talking about Bear Grylls and we were just, and then, you know, one of them was like, Mel, I just watched this episode and he found this like dead snake and he just peed in it and then used the dead snake full of his hot pee as like a hot water bottle to help keep his like fingers and hands warm when he was freezing. And I was like, it's not like that's not what I'm telling you guys to do. Like if you've got wet bedding, don't pee in a snake and use it as a hot water bottle.
If the idea of doing that floats your boat, go for it.
Yeah, I mean that's extreme.
If you're at that point and you've got the option of packing up and going home,
please go home.
Just go home. If the weather's so bad that you are sitting inside your tent frightened that it's going to fall down or you're just not comfortable or you're miserable, if it's so hot and steamy that you just can't enjoy what you're doing, just pack up and go home.
It
happens. That's we're out in Mother Nature.
Yes. You did make a really good point before though about when camping goes wrong, because we're all sort of talking about things like weather in your kit, but you've mentioned you've rocked up to a campsite and it's maybe not been what you expected or what sort of you thought about or read about or whatever. And then that brings up the element of when camping goes wrong, what if you've got really terrible neighbours?
Yeah.
You know, like I think we've done an episode before on camping etiquette where we did touch on that and maybe how to handle those situations, but that's very much when camping goes wrong, because I think we all know people who have shared a story of a trip that they went on that was horrible because of the other people that were in the campground. And I think in that situation, again, as much as it sucks and you shouldn't have to, it does come down to that question of what's my next 2 or 3 days going to be like if I choose to stay here, and how is it going to make me feel?
Yeah.
Because we go camping to recharge, right? To get a sea change and, you know, deregulate and decompress and and if that's not what is actively happening because of things that you can't control, because to a certain extent, gear failure, you can control that to a certain extent, right? Yeah. Especially if you've got a kid in your car, you've got some gaffer tape, you've got some ferrules, you've got a couple of what do you call them, zip ties. Like you can have a bit of a bush mechanics sort of kit going on.
Get you through. Yep.
But you can't have a kit in your car for dickheads.
No.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
Well, you have.
Well, I have now.
Yeah. We'll leave it up to a video editor whether he bleeps that out or not.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Apologies if.
I think that's the second or third time you've sworn. I'm yet to swear. So control yourself. I forgot what I was going to say now. Speak to them first, because if they are being that obnoxious, then it's not cool. It's not within the camping code of conduct. It's not whether there's actually a camping code of conduct, but if there was, like loud music and just being obnoxious and up late and not thinking about your neighbours is not cool. So speak to them, find out how long they're going to be there. Maybe they're going to leave the next night, so don't bail out if they're about to leave. Yeah. And maybe you might be able to.
It's a really good point.
Just say, look, can you not? Yeah. Can we both be happy? Yeah. Here, if we find a happy medium.
Yeah. Because, I mean, it would suck if you've just rocked up, you know, for a 3-day trip and they're on their last night, you know. So, having a chat and finding that out is probably good before you make the decision to go home. But
so many other ways when camping can go wrong. So I would say, have you got any more to add? I was going to summarize.
Look, the only other thing that I can really summarize with is if you are about to go on a trip where that maybe is a little bit different to what you've done before, maybe you're someone who has mostly done fair weather camping before, and you're doing your first winter trip and, you know, you've not really camped in rain before or things like that. Just even YouTube. I mean, some of you are watching us on YouTube now. YouTube is an incredible resource to just sort of Google and find out information and have, you know, reviews or videos of people's camping setups or how they do things. And a lot of the time you're not really like, even for me, having been camping my whole life, I'm going to be 40 this year. So that's like 40 years. I will still come across people who've done something or had to set up some way. And I was like, blow my mind.
Yeah.
So don't knock trying to sort of grow your skills and understanding or learning of the way other people camp and the things that other people do, because I think that's going to be your best resource. And then I think, that's going to make the difference in how you prepared, not just mentally, but I think sometimes if you are in a situation when you're camping and something goes wrong, if it's the first time you've experienced that or the first time you've heard of it or you've not come across anybody else dealing with that, it might feel really overwhelming.
Yeah.
It might feel like an end game sort of situation. Whereas if you've seen or heard or read about similar situations or something happening in the past and the way someone else has dealt with it, you might have a bit of an idea in the back of your mind about how you're going to work through it.
Ask other people, if you don't have YouTube and there's other people in the campsite and something happens and you're not sure, approach other people too. In my experience, most people in the same space out to enjoy that environment will help anyone. And
totally
across all the stuff that everyone's brought to go camping with, someone's probably got something to get you out of a situation.
Yeah, and I do remember actually being at a campsite one time where someone had a camper trailer and there was something that had gone not catastrophically wrong, but they couldn't open it up and get something locked into place and they were having a really hard time. And there were actually a couple of people from a few different campsites and they were all standing around with a beer and they were all sort of, well, what if you try this? And people were holding on to it and everybody was pitching in to try and help resolve this solution. And in the end, it worked. In the end, I wasn't actually a part of it because we were rocking up sort of at the same time that it was going on. But I was just something that I observed and thought was really cool. So there's always going to be that option there. So don't feel like you can't ask for a hand or things like that.
I think to summarize though, if what's happened is going to make you miserable for the rest of your trip, then just pack up and go home.
Yeah.
Cut your losses.
Yeah.
Except it hasn't worked out how you wanted it to.
Yeah.
That can happen in camping.
Yeah.
If you're happy to try and fix, modify, change, sort of redirect your thoughts for the trip, then do that and just accept that happened and this is how our trip looks now.
And I'd say have a crack at giving it a fix because if it doesn't work out, you can still go home. If you make a decision of this is going to make me miserable, I think I'm going to go home, that's not going to change whether or not you delay it for maybe another hour or so and try and come up with a solution.
Try and stay relaxed.
Just chill.
You're out there to relax.
Chill.
Cool.
Have fun, guys. We will see you soon. I'm not sure if our interview will be next week, but if not, it'll be the week after. Just stay tuned and hang with us while we get through the end of the summer holidays and recover from our Christmas, New Year period. But we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Catch you later.